Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another planetarium show, but not just any normal planetarium show. Tonight, we are kicking off our annual Dark Sky Caravan event. Very excited to be here and to be doing this. I'm Jessica. I'm the planetarium director. I'm joined with quite a few people tonight. We have two of our planetarium students who I will let say hi. We'll start with Braden.
Hi, I'm Braden. I'm a music education student here at UMD.
And Luis.
I'm Luis. I'm a chemical engineering student here at UMD.
Love the still Halloween background.
Oh yeah, I'm just getting ready to do another Harry Potter show soon.
Absolutely. And then we are joined by two special guests tonight. Emma Adams, who is the campus operations. I forget already. You told me already. She does a lot of amazing work up at the Chik-Wauk Museum and Nature Center, where we will be at on Saturday. And then, of course, we also have Bob King, aka Astro Bob, well known in the Duluth area and loved by so many, and we're very grateful to have them both here tonight. So for our kickoff to this week-long event, we are going to kind of hear from both of our guests to take a look at kind of what light pollution is and preserving the dark skies that we are so thankful to have here in Minnesota, and then what we can see in those skies. So I think I'm going to stop talking and go ahead and turn it over to Emma.
All right.
I guess I should add real quick while you work on that. If you have any questions throughout our show tonight, feel free to leave them down in the comments. We'll be keeping an eye on that. We'll let everyone know when questions come up, or if we're not able to get to them right away, we will have time for questions at the end as well.
Let's see. Am I sharing my note? I think I am sharing.
Yes, you're sharing the notes.
Let's not share that page so you all don't have to see that. Here we go. And I will share this page. There we go. That look better to you
Looks
all?
good.
Awesome. So, like Jessica said, my name is Emma Adams, and I work at this building right here, Chik-Wauk Museum and Nature Center. That right there is our museum, and we have a couple other buildings as well. I am the campus operations assistant. I do a whole lot of things, but one of my other jobs is kind of our dark sky specialist at Chik-Wauk. So just a little bit about what Chik-Wauk is. We are a nature center and museum run and operated by the Gunflint Trail Historical Society. We are located on Saginaw Lake at the end of the Gunflint Trail. So I'll go through a little bit of a map. Here is Saginaw Lake. It borders the US and Canada. We are on the United States side. And we are right here, just kind of on a small finger. There's only 1.5 miles left of the Gunflint Trail. So you can see right here, way at the end, and kind of far from Duluth. It'll be at 3 hours from the planetarium if you don't hit traffic or any moose along the way. We are open daily 10 to 5 and connect people with the cultural and natural history and heritage of the area. We do a lot of work with the dark sky, do a lot of work with loons, and histories of the lodges and the Anishinaabe people who are the original landowners of this area. We also have a lot of hiking trails, really good blueberries at the moment, if you want to come pick blueberries. But enough about Chik-Wauk. We'll go into a little bit more about the dark sky. So in 2020, so that would be 2 years ago, the Boundary Waters Canoe Wilderness Area became a designated dark sky sanctuary. And this is through the International Dark Sky Association, a group that works throughout the world promoting dark skies and educating on light pollution and the importance of dark skies and what that does to humans and to animals and how we can protect that. So there are 14 dark sky sanctuaries in the world, and only 6 of them are the US, and one of them is up here in northern Minnesota. So we're really privileged to have that in our backyard. For me, it is my backyard, you in Duluth, and it's not too far away. I'd like you all, if you are in the comments on Facebook, to write me if you have ever seen the Milky Way. Now, the reason I'm asking you to make that comment is because only 80% of people, or I'm sorry, 80% of people cannot see the Milky Way for where they live, so only 20% can. So if we look at the US, that would be 265 million people that cannot see the Milky Way. And here in the US, only 99% of people experience natural light when it is evening time. So that means that there is some form of street lights or business lights outside of their home where they live. Where I am living at the end of the Gunflint Trail, I'm pretty privileged. I get to see the Milky Way every night that there is not a cloud or multiple clouds in the sky or a storm. So last night we had quite a big storm, didn't see the Milky Way, but tonight the skies are quite clear outside. I can see everything and I will be able to see the Milky Way.
Looks like we got a couple people in the comments who have been able to see the Milky Way.
That is great. And part of the reason that people aren't able to see the Milky Way, or the biggest reason, is light pollution. So most of the pollution that we're familiar with is like garbage and trash, right? The pollution, maybe chemical pollution, oil spills. But there's also light pollution, which is just that excessive amount of man-made light. So that could be from street lights, car lights. Think about the McDonald's bright neon sign, or if you ever drive past, I know there's multiple stores I could name off that have their lights on even when they're closed. All of that would be considered light pollution. There are 3 types of light pollution. One is glaring. So that's going to be those bright lights that are going to impair your eyesight. I like to think that best of when you're driving and someone's car lights get in your eyes and it takes you just like a second to kind of re-see what you're seeing. And there's light trespass, light that's intended for one purpose that impacts adjacent people or places. This I always think of my bedroom growing up in my parents' house. Across the street is a street lamp. You know, the purpose of that lamp is to make sure that when you're driving, you can see a little bit on the road, and probably to prevent a little bit of crime as well. But really what I think that light did most of the time was just keep me from sleeping when it came in through my window, and lit up my whole bedroom as I was trying to go to sleep. So that light was trespassing into my home, where the purpose of the light was not needed. And then sky glow is where lights come up in the sky from a city or brightly lit businesses. This is it can be really more obvious when you go out, maybe into the country a little bit, and still can kind of see the city lights when you look off in the distance. Definitely, like if you go up 61 from Duluth and turn around, it might be dark where you're at, but you can still see where the city is, where Duluth is, and that's going to be your sky glow. So why do we care about light pollution rather than it might have interrupted my personal sleep a little bit? We're going to talk about how light pollution can negatively impact us, and then as well as how it can impact animals and plants. So for humans, there's a number of health risks that come from light pollution, and that stems from our circadian rhythm. So circadian rhythm is kind of like our internal clock that lets us know when it's time to get tired, when it's time to be more energetic. So as the sun starts going down, your body's going to release more chemicals that tell your body it's time to rest and kind of get ready for bed. And then when it's dark, there's going to be some more of those chemicals, mostly some melatonin, which you may all be familiar with as a sleeping aid that you can take, but your body also naturally will produce this. And then as the sun comes up, your hormones will change. There will be less melatonin, and you'll become more energetic and ready for the day so that you can be active when the sun is out. Artificial light, so lighting from the street, lighting in your home, lighting from your computers, disrupts this cycle and the hormone release in your body. So your body is not as aware of what is artificial light and what is natural light as you may be, and will not be able to release those chemicals as correctly as they need to be. And so this can really disrupt also your ability to sleep. There have been a number of studies done, mostly comparing people that work in night shifts versus people that work during the day shifts. And people that work in those evening shifts have an increased risk of obesity, depression, a lot of sleep disorders, diabetes, a number form of cancers. And I think for most people, it is evident to see that that light can kind of disrupt your sleep. I want you to think, if you've ever gone camping, how much easier it is for you to fall asleep kind of at that night dark time, right? I never stay up till 2, 3 in the morning when I'm camping, but at home, if I'm watching TV or have all my lights on, it's a lot easier for my body to stay up till 2, 3 in the morning because of that artificial light. And we'll move on a little bit to animals. One big animal impact is going to be on birds. So lights are going to cause a lot of disorientation for these animals. Sometimes it can confuse them. A lot of animals will use moonlight as their compass, kind of. It'll tell them where north and south is, what the direction they need to go is. So a street light or bright light, city lights are going to act as that moonlight for these animals, and they may not be able to orient themselves where the moon is because the light over there. There's also a lot of issues between predator and prey. So when it is very bright, a predator or a prey, has less chance to hide. Right? Think of a small mouse running in the dark along a meadow or on the road. It's a lot harder for a hawk to see that mouse in the dark. If we have a lot of light, that hawk will have a much better chance of finding that mouse. And you may say, well, isn't that good for the hawks? And yes, it might be good for those hawks for a couple weeks, right? So they have an easier access to the mice. But if they are consuming mice over and over, have a lot easier and can eat many at one time, they might, or they will not have that food source for later. And then, for the mice, that's definitely a lot harder for them. One of the most, famous reasons or disruptions to wildlife is through sea turtles and puffins. Obviously, we don't have those in Minnesota, but in a lot of the world, these animals are attracted to where they need to go. So they'll hatch on land and go out to sea where they need to go live their adult lives and go get food. And they know which way the ocean is based on the reflection of the moon and the starlight from the ocean, where the land does not have that much light and reflection from the moon. So they will be attracted to where it is more light, because that is naturally where the ocean is going to be. But as we build cities upon the coasts and have lots of more lit areas that end up being brighter than the ocean, that confuses the sea turtles and puffins to go inland towards the city in the opposite way, which can cause a number of problems. They come into a lot more predators that way. Some of their predators are going to become cars, and they're not going to where they need to go anyways to get food. And I don't know if you've ever hatched from an egg. I haven't, but it's you're going to need food very soon to contain your energy going. With birds, their circadian rhythm is going to be affected with light, just as humans are, and can change when they use their vocalizations. So in a city, you may find that birds are calling earlier than you may out where there is less light. And they also will collide into more buildings as well. The last thing I want to talk about with the animal impact here is any nocturnal animal. Having that artificial light can really confuse their circadian rhythm, and their adaptations to the night are no longer as effective when the night is lit. So ecosystems are impacted as well. So we talked a little bit about animals, and so animals obviously are connected into those ecosystems as well, and a big, huge loop will change. But I want to talk a little bit about this plant. This is a cabbage thistle.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I don't
Yes.
know if you've been changing slides. It hasn't been changing on the screen.
Oh, it hasn't changed on the screen? Oh. Yes, I have been. Interesting. There we go.
Okay, yeah, I see that now.
Okay, interesting. So let me find my notes again. There we go. So this picture here is a cabbage thistle, and studies were done on this plant. They set up 2 meadows. One meadow was covered with LED lights, and one meadow was not. It would have been in its more natural habitat, to see how insects interacted with these plants. So the LED meadow had 62 fewer insect visits to the plants, 29% less pollinators, and then throughout the time, 13% less fruit than the natural light. This is partly from the insects being confused by the light. I had mentioned that a lot of insects use the moon to navigate. A lot of pollinators and evening pollinators, moths, they're attracted to that light because of the moon, and it helps them navigate. If you just think about your lamps outside or flashlights, you're always going to get those moths become attracted to them. And so they'll become disoriented and not be able to interact with those plants and pollinate them like they do naturally. I think it's also really important to think about that, we might not need cabbage thistle, isn't our number one important agricultural crop. So it producing 13 less fruit is not necessarily a huge impact to us as humans. But imagine this also going for tomatoes or for cucumbers or squash, all these fruits and vegetables that we need pollinators to supply the fruit for us. If we have 13% less fruit because of our lighting situation, we get 13% less fruit, and that's going to make our food more expensive just because of, say, excessive light. So the cabbage thistle might not be as impactful to us, but I always want to remember that this was just one study that could be implemented into any of our foods. So, what can we do at home to help kind of reduce this light pollution? One of the things is to turn off your outside lights. If you are home, everyone is home in your house, you don't necessarily need your garage lights on, right? Also, fixing your lights in a downward motion, not having them out, having like a cone onto them so that they only are where they're needed. The light only hits what's needed. Advocating for some light ordinances in your community. I know Duluth has done a lot of work around this, but still needs a lot more. So if you're in that community, if you're in other communities, this is a great opportunity to work in your local government, talking to local businesses about their neon signs, changing maybe some of that really, really bright signage into less bright, or having them turn it off when they are no longer open, and those sorts of things. Really kind of advocating in your community. And I would really suggest looking at the International Dark Sky Association website if you really want to get more into that kind of information. They have really good resources that could help you out, better than I could right on this quick little Facebook chat that I have with you. That is what I have for this evening. Thank you all for listening. Just want to remind you all that I'm from Chik-Wauk, which is run by the Gunflint Trail Historical Society. And if you are willing to make the drive or are already up here on the 13th, this Saturday, Jessica and the planetarium staff will be visiting us, and we'll be doing a really cool dark sky party.
Absolutely. And just reiterating, if you want more information, the International Dark Sky Association is great. We actually are going to have a member of the local chapter, which was Starry Skies North, I believe is what they've rebranded as. They will be joining us on Friday the 12th at North House Folk School in Grand Marais. We'll have a representative there, and she'll be able to talk all about these efforts and kind of how we can mitigate light pollution ourselves. I believe we're going to have someone at our star party at the planetarium in Duluth tomorrow as well. I just realized I need to double check that he is coming. But yeah, so we'll have people that can give more information on this as well. Yeah, so thank you so much, Emma. I'm not seeing any questions right away, but if anyone has questions, go ahead and throw them down in the comments. And we'll just give that a minute to see if any questions come through.
Sounds good, yes.
Yeah. I know I've been trying to prep my students coming up with me for like what the skies are going to be like at Chik-Wauk, because it's something else.
Yeah, if you've not seen skies like this before, it is, it's one of the darkest places in the world, and you can basically see anything that the naked eye can see is what you will be able to see. Most nights, to be honest, it's really just cloud cover that is going to affect. I know I have seen the Northern Lights a good number of times just out my window, so
I'm definitely hoping we get something for Saturday. I'd love to see them finally.
yes.
And if you kind of want to see what we're talking about with how beautiful these skies are, we actually have a camera up on the roof of the Chik-Wauk Museum. It is our all-sky camera. It runs, from 30 minutes before sunset to 30 minutes after sunrise, taking pictures once a minute. There's a link down in the video description. You can always go check that out. We can see the aurora when it happens up there. Otherwise, it's just gorgeous night sky. Like, I think every time I look at, just checking on the camera and I look, and it's just like that summer Milky Way is just stunning.
Yes. Yeah, no,
So.
it's beautiful. Sometimes I feel bad for like going to bed before it's totally dark because I just, I'm like, do I stay up to see the lights or do I make sure I get a good night, get all the sleep that I need tonight?
I guess it's different when it is literally your backyard.
Yes. Yeah, no, it's, a daily thing. So I sometimes choose the sleep.
All right. Well, thank you again. I'm not seeing any questions coming through right now, so I think we will toss it on over to Bob, who will be our second presenter for tonight. So, Bob, it is all yours.
Thanks very much, Jessica. I appreciate it. It's fun to be here. Thanks for the invitation. Very nice presentation, Emma. Your personal experiences, too, that you shared were good. And relevant to us all. The light of pollution affects us all. I'm going to talk about things you can see when there isn't any light pollution or when light pollution is minimal. I'm an amateur astronomer. I'm here in Duluth, Minnesota, and we have a clear night tonight coming up. As a matter of fact, there's going to be like 3 clear nights in a row. So if you're in the area, in Duluth, up the North Shore where Emma is, or anywhere across Minnesota, northern Wisconsin, certainly you're going to have some clear nights these next few nights. So many opportunities to just get outside and enjoy the heavens. You're going to have a little trouble with the moon, though. The moon is beautiful in its own right, but because it's waxing and will be full later this week, at least temporarily, it's going to dim the Milky Way, although maybe not at Chik-Wauk, which is a paradise of light, of starlight. So I'll start my presentation, and we will take a look at some of the things that you can see. Many of them, I think, actually from your house, even from locations that are light polluted to a degree. I can't promise you're going to see this in downtown Chicago or Los Angeles, but if you live in Duluth or in medium-sized cities, or certainly in the countryside, you'll see everything I'm talking about. I'm calling it the joys of August stargazing. I could call it the joy of September stargazing because every month and any time is a wonderful time to be outside and enjoy something the sky has to offer, because it always has something up there. Even if you just stare straight into the stars, wordless, and don't have a thought, that is enough. We're going to face the southern sky this evening. This map shows the basic constellations and brighter stars visible this evening, kind of a panorama as you're facing towards the south. So it's pretty much the whole southern sky, almost up to the top of the sky. See this star right up here called Vega? That's right up really high. And then down below here, there's the moon. And the moon is in waxing gibbous phase. That's a weirdo name, gibbous. That is the moon between half and full. So in other words, it's the 3/4 moon. And the waxing gibbous moon will be in the constellation of the teapot. You see that little, it looks just like my grandmother's teapot. They don't make them quite like that anymore, but you can see the spout here and the top and the handle and the bottom. And this is also called Sagittarius, which is one of the zodiac constellations. And the moon, like all the planets, passes through all 12 of the zodiac constellations. Tonight, the moon's in Sagittarius, and it will be in gibbous phase, the brightest thing in the nighttime sky this evening. Our other bright lights that you'll be able to see are to the right of the moon, well to the right in the southwestern sky. You're going to see kind of a flashing fiery red star. That star is called Antares, Antares, and it's located in the constellation of Scorpius, the Scorpion, another zodiac constellation you might be familiar with. If we swing all the way to the left of the moon, way off to the southeastern sky now, you're going to see one single bright star coming up later on this evening after 10 o'clock. That's the planet Saturn. So we have Antares on the right, the moon here, Saturn on your left as you're facing towards the south. If you then look up above you, you're going to see these three bright stars, Vega, Deneb, and Altair, and each one is the brightest star in its constellation. Deneb in Cygnus, which is also called the Northern Cross, Altair and Aquila, the eagle, and Vega or Vega, either pronunciation is fine, in Lyra, the harp. Really little, kind of a faint constellation. And this smoky stuff you see here, what Emma talked about, that's the Milky Way. And you might just see the upper part of the Milky Way farthest from the moon this evening. So those are our 6 bright lights: Deneb, Vega, Altair, Saturn, the moon, and Antares. So if you've got a pair of binoculars, I mean, you don't need to have binoculars to look at the moon. You could just go look at the moon and enjoy that light. And when you have a gibbous moon, it's bright enough to show your path at night. So you can walk by moonlight no matter where you're at. There's plenty of light from that gibbous moon. You can kind of make out some forms on the moon, the dark areas, the light areas. But if you take a pair of binoculars and point it at the moon, you'll be able to see the larger craters this evening, some of the bigger ones. It's a fun activity to do alone, maybe bring your kids out too. One of the bigger ones and very prominent this evening is this one named Copernicus, which is about 55 miles in diameter. Think about that for a second. 55, start at your house and go 55 miles north. That's how big Copernicus is. The other one that looks like a gigantic swimming pool is called Plato. And then down at the other end of the moon, in this very rugged, very crater dense zone on the moon, you're going to see a kind of the belly button of the moon called Tycho. And all 3 of these and more craters are visible through a pair of binoculars, including some of the lunar seas. Of course, here's the Sea of Showers, which doesn't actually rain on the moon, but it's a very fanciful name for what people used to think of areas of the moon. Here's the Sea of Serenity. You can look at it and feel an inner peace. Down here is the Sea of Tranquility, where the first Apollo astronauts landed in 1969. So try binoculars on the moon tonight. Our other bright light in the sky that we talked about is Saturn. And it's looks just like a star because it's so far from the Earth that it just shrinks down to a point. Saturn is just about, well, it's pretty close to 824 million miles away. So it's way out there, but it's a big planet and it reflects a lot of sunlight and those rings are bright. So we can easily see Saturn with the naked eye, even from light polluted locations. Earth and Saturn will be at their closest for this year on August 14th, which is what? Next Sunday. So although 823.7 billion miles doesn't sound close, that's as close as we're getting. Saturn's one of the outer planets, right? It's the farthest planet that was visible to previous generations of humans before the invention of the telescope. So that was as far as it went. And then the telescope was invented and we expanded the solar system by leaps and bounds. Saturn takes like 29 years or so to make one orbit of the sun compared to just 1 year for the Earth. And Saturn's axis is tipped, just like the Earth's axis is tipped. So we see the rings presented at different angles to us as the planet slowly revolves around the sun. So here I'm showing you the northern hemisphere of Saturn. Back in the year 2017, for the northern hemisphere, Saturn was tipped towards the sun, so it was the summer solstice. It was high summer on the planet. Not that it gets very warm there. It's like 300 degrees below zero that far out from the sun. It will be fall in Saturn's northern hemisphere in 2025, and then winter in 2032. You can see how long those seasons last because the planet is moving so much slower because it's so much farther from the sun. Notice that the presentation of the rings changes. We see the north face here. They are edgewise, like so. at the equinoxes, and then the south face of the ring is visible when it's the winter solstice. Pretty cool how that can play out. And you can see these things through a telescope. These are the whole series of Saturn taken through a telescope. And this is where we're at right now. So if you've got that old scope somewhere in the attic or the crawl space, you want to bring that out. Now is the time to take a look at the planet. Now, all the way through the end of fall, Saturn will be visible in the evening sky. And the rings are tipped about halfway, so they make a beautiful view in a telescope. You need about 40 power magnification to see them. Come May in 2025, they'll be edgewise. And they're so thin compared to how big they are, they're actually going to disappear in most telescopes until the rings open up again. Following behind Saturn, in other words, it rises later in the evening, is an incredibly bright planet, the second brightest planet after Venus, and that's Jupiter. I took this photograph north of Duluth on a beautiful dark night, and you can see Saturn up. I'm facing to the east now. That's Jupiter's direction. Remember I said Saturn's kind of in the southeastern sky? By the way, to tell direction, just pull out your phone. I know if you have an iPhone, it has a built-in compass app on it. So you just get that going, you'll know what direction to face. Jupiter rises in the east. It's well to the left of Saturn, and it's unmistakable because it is so brilliant. If you go out at around 11 o'clock your time, local time, you're going to see Jupiter burning away towards the eastern horizon. Here it is through a telescope, taken just a few days ago by an amateur astronomer. You can see some of these spectacular dark cloud bands. The winds are just whipping the clouds. It's like 250-mile-an-hour winds just whipping and stretching those clouds into bands. And down here is the great red spot, this hurricane-like storm that's been around for at least 300 years on Jupiter. How about that for some bad weather for a long, long time? A pair of binoculars, if you look at Jupiter night after night, you're going to see tiny points of light moving near it, very close to the planet, within the glare of Jupiter. But if you focus sharply, you'll see those little tiny stars. They're actually 4 of Jupiter's brightest moons: Io, Callisto, Europa, and Ganymede. And you can do this from any light-polluted sky where you live. There's some other things happening too with the moon. Back on July 26th, I got up at the ungodly hour of 3:15, and I went down to Lake Superior, and just before the clouds came down, the moon and Saturn were visible beautifully in the eastern sky. This was taken right at dawn, and you can see their reflection on the lake. And it was just, I lost some sleep, okay, but it was such a wonderful way to start the day. These type of events where a bright planet and the moon line up together in the sky, close together, they're called conjunctions. You could have 2 planets together, that's a conjunction. Moon and a planet, that's a conjunction. The reason planets and the moon, or planets and other planets, line up, and they do this regularly, is because the solar system is so flat. Here we are on the Earth. The planets and the moon basically orbit within the same plane. I've got my Frisbee here to demonstrate. Here it is. This is the solar system right here. And so as they circle in the same plane and we look out from the Earth, we look across our line of sight. And if 2 planets, or the moon and a planet, happen to lie along the same line of sight, despite their great distance from one another, we see them right next to each other in the sky. And we call that a conjunction. Here's an interesting conjunction, not nearly as moving to the spirit, but it's a conjunction of an airplane and the moon. Again, we're seeing them along the same line of sight. So we have 2 really cool conjunctions coming up just in the next week. On the 11th, during full moon, the moon will appear right below the planet Saturn. So all you got to do, if you're having any trouble finding Saturn, is just go out and find the moon. Oh, there it is, right above it, you're going to see Saturn. And then several days later, as the moon orbits the Earth, it moves eastward each night in its orbit. It will be near the planet Jupiter and in conjunction yet again, 2 in a row, August 11th and August 14th. There are still more planets, and I'm going to show you the last sort of evening planet. You can see Mars and the Earth are slowly drawing closer to one another right now. So the planet Mars is getting brighter in the sky. You can see it in the evening, or pretty late actually. If anybody out there gets up at 1 o'clock in the morning or is up between 1 and 2, you can look out your window to the east and you'll see a bright red star down there. That's the planet Mars. And for the next couple of weeks, it's going to appear close to the little cluster we call the Pleiades, also known as the Seven Sisters star cluster. So we've got 2 evening planets, and then we've got Mars, kind of late night type planet. One of the things we all look forward to, and which Emma mentioned also, is the Northern Lights. And this was a display that happened over the region back on July 22nd. And we even had Northern Lights this morning. There was a display, and I kept checking. I knew it was out, but we had overcast skies, at least in Minnesota and across Wisconsin, and it rained. I would go out and it would just rain. I thought, no, we're missing the Northern Lights. But Northern Lights are related to solar activity. And when solar activity goes up, the possibility for Northern Lights also goes up. And the sun's activity has been increasing as it approaches a maximum in the year 2025. So Northern Lights will become more frequent. Just check the northern sky, especially on nights when there's not much of a moon, and look for a glow down there near the northern horizon. That's usually the first sign. It's kind of a bow shape. The first sign that a Northern Lights display is underway. We do have a small chance of an aurora tonight. You see, I wrote that in there. It's not great, probably more for if you live in the country, but the aurora is still kind of unpredictable. So who knows? I'll be looking, I know that. This is one of my favorite photos. I took that very same night in July. And I thought, you know, here was a firefly. That's what you're seeing in the foreground. And I thought the firefly it was almost like, look at me, you know, I can make that kind of an arc too in the sky. So I felt very lucky that that firefly passed through my photograph at that time. At the same time, there was a beautiful arc. Okay, we've talked a little bit about the moon and about the planets. I'd like to just introduce a few very basic constellations, the bright ones, okay? The ones that you can still see even in moonlight. This is a view facing west, northwest now. Remember earlier we were to the south, now we're northwest, west. So we pivoted about 90 degrees. I wonder if you can see the Big Dipper in this picture. Anybody? Maybe? There's some help. Here's the handle of the dipper. Here's the bowl. And I've labeled the stars. This one gets 2 names. The reason why, if you look really closely, you might see there's another star right on top of it. The bright star is called Mizar, and it has a companion star called Alcor. And if you have good vision, this is sort of a test of vision, see if you can spot both Mizar and Alcor at the same time. If you do, your eyesight's good. If you follow the arc of the dipper's handle to the left, you're going to hit a very bright star, kind of the same color as Mars or Antares. That's Arcturus, a brilliant star in the constellation of the herdsman called Boötes. There he is. There's the constellation of Boötes. Here's Arcturus at the bottom. I always like to look at this as a sugar cone. You see the cone shape right here, heaped with my favorite flavor of ice cream, which it varies, but I do like butter pecan. So we have a lot of butter pecan filling a sugar cone, and Arcturus is at the bottom. And if you're lucky, you'll get those cones that have chocolate right there at the bottom, right at the end. Those are the best, because then you can bite into Arcturus when you're finished. Here's the handle of the dipper, the body, And you can see that the Dipper is not an actual constellation of its own, but part of a much larger group, a true constellation called Ursa Major, the Great Bear. We're going to turn now, pivot again. Okay, we're going to go past north to the northeast. And when we face northeast, we see the W constellation of Cassiopeia, spelling its name just perfectly there. Down below the W is a string of stars that make up Andromeda, the princess who's chained to a rock. And then here next to her is the Great Square of Pegasus, a really good figure to get acquainted with, because when you learn that Great Square, you can use it to point to other constellations. I also included the Perseid Radiant, and that's where the Perseid meteors come from. And we'll talk about that in just a moment. Here are the mythological figures, so you can picture them a little bit better. There's Perseus the hero. Andromeda is Cassiopeia's daughter. Here is Cassiopeia herself in her chair, admiring herself in a mirror. And down here is the great flying horse, Pegasus. And inside Pegasus, that is the Great Square. There's another view of the Great Square. And hey, when Jupiter comes up, it's located right down below the Great Square. So if you are having difficulty finding it, first spot Jupiter and then look right above it, about 1, 2 vertical fists like this. Put your fist against the sky and go 1, 2. I wanted to take a quick stop at the Galactic Center before we go on and wrap up with the Perseid meteor shower, which is this week's big highlight. When you face towards the moon tonight, just to its right, invisible to your eye, is the center of the galaxy. It'll just look like gray sky. And even on a dark night, you really won't see anything there except a little bit of the Milky Way, that glow of the Milky Way. But this past spring, scientists who had been working for years with multiple telescopes released the first photograph of what's in the Galactic Center. And some of you may have already seen this image, but it's a supermassive black hole. It has imagine the sun and all the matter that makes up the sun. There's 4 million suns worth of matter crushed down into a spherical area, or into a point actually, to a very small space, crushed so tightly that the gravitational pull of those 4 million objects in a tiny spot is strong enough to actually suck in the light. So no light leaves this mass. And so it looks black, invisible. And that's why it's called a black hole. And here it is. That is our black hole there. And then around it, there's these glowing regions where matter is kind of swirling down into the black hole. And as it does, it becomes heated to like billions of degrees. And it starts glowing, in all different colors of light. This is just an idea of how big a telescope it took to see that. The black hole itself might be a couple times the size of Mercury. It's about the size of Mercury's orbit, and that may seem big, but it's 26,000 light years away, incredibly distant. And so astronomers had to link together like a dozen telescopes from around the globe to make one giant, almost Earth-sized telescope in order to make that image. They combined the light or the information from all of these scopes. And it took years to do it, so it's really a massive achievement. I thought you'd like to know how black holes form, and since we don't have a lot of time, I thought I'd let the cat speak to the matter. Sorry, I know it's a bad joke, but I couldn't resist. All right, now on to the Perseid meteor shower. We'll make a brief stop at the full moon though, because that's going to be a little bit of a problem for the meteor shower. This Thursday night, the moon will be full, and we call it the full sturgeon moon because that's a traditional name based on native peoples from the eastern North America. This was the time to fish for sturgeon in the Great Lakes, hence the name. And that occurs on Thursday night. Well, guess what else happens very close to that time? The next night on August 12th, which is Friday night, overnight from the 12th into Saturday morning, we are going to see the peak or the maximum of the annual Perseid meteor shower. It happens every year. That's a meteor that you're seeing there, kind of slicing right through the Milky Way. A very cool shot someone took. It peaks on the night of the 12th, and it starts really as soon as it gets dark. You can just be out, having a picnic, being out down by the lake or wherever you're at. But as it gets later, the later it gets, the higher that little radiant gets that I showed you earlier, the higher in the sky Perseus gets, and the more meteors you'll see. So the best time of most meteors would be late at night, like after midnight, between midnight and dawn. Face north, that's the key. You know why? Because the full moon is out. So if you face towards the moon's direction, you'll get so much glare from the moon that it will ruin your night vision. So just keep the moon at your back. Meteors from the Perseid shower, they fly all over the sky. You can always know it's a Perseid though, because you'll trace it back to this point right here, called the radiant, located in the constellation of Perseus the hero. And that's the reason why they're called the Perseids. And that radiance starts off low, but then it gets higher the later it gets. And there's the Great Square, which you learned about just a moment ago, and there's Jupiter. Sometimes you have to wait a few minutes between meteors. So while you do, see if you can identify a couple of those constellations. Perseids, where do they come from? What are these things? Well, they're little bits and pieces from this comet. This comet's called Swift-Tuttle. It's a pretty big chunk of dirty ice as comets go, and that's what they're made out of. They're made out of water ice, carbon monoxide and carbon dioxide ice. Carbon dioxide ice is the same as dry ice. When they get close to the sun vaporizes material from the surface, and sunlight pushes back the dust that was embedded within that ice to form a tail. If you could see a Perseid meteor before it arrived, and a meteor out there before it arrives is called a meteoroid, you would see mostly sand grains. They're only about the size of a sand grain. But some of the bigger, brighter meteors that you'll see, and the Perseid shower is well known for its fireballs. They would be about the size of a grape nut, like I've got here in this photograph, that cereal. So maybe a few millimeters across. That thing is hitting the atmosphere at such tremendous velocity, just tens and tens of thousands of miles an hour. It heats up and it produces a tremendous amount of energy in a brief moment. That is the meteor streak we see with our eyes. It happens every year. You know why? Because that comet goes around the sun regularly. And so there's debris in its path. And every time the Earth intersects the path of the comet, here's the Earth right here, here's the comet's path. When we plow through the comet's path, it's like going through a thunderstorm. All of a sudden it's raining out, right? You go through that path, all of a sudden that debris is striking your windshield. And in the case of the Earth, our windshield is our atmosphere. And this is a lovely image that shows, it's a composite image of many dozens and dozens. It's not going to look like this. Of course not. Don't get the wrong idea. I wish it did, like a storm, but somebody spent hours and hours and hours taking photographs of the Perseids and then overlapped all the images. And it's so beautiful because it shows faint little streaks. It captures some bright fireballs, and it shows you clearly the radiant point in the distance where the meteors appear to stream from. So we have what? We have the moon tonight. Okay, we've got Saturn and Jupiter. For those who stay up late, Mars will be coming up in the east after Jupiter. We've got a couple of interesting constellations, the Big Dipper and the Great Square of Pegasus. You can't keep all this in your head, and I would not expect you to. And you don't have to, because you can go online right now and get yourself a free monthly calendar and SkyMap at skymaps.com. Just go to this site and you'll see some options. It'll say Northern Hemisphere, month of August. Just click on that. It'll give you a PDF, hit the print button, and you get this. You get a map showing the night sky. Notice there's Pegasus and Andromeda in the eastern part of the sky off to the left. You also get a calendar of events so that you know when to go out and watch. And with that, I'm finished with my presentation. And if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Awesome. And I will say, those star charts that Bob just talked about, we do have them at the planetarium. We pass them out for anyone who's interested that comes to our shows, and we will have a lot of them on hand for each of our star
Yay.
parties this week.
That's great.
There's also lots of
That's
really
wonderful.
great phone apps. Yeah, there's lots of really great phone apps too that will use augmented reality so that you can like hold your phone up and it shows you kind of what's in the sky. We'll be on hand to help you find some good ones. We'll have like a little sheet with like some of our favorite apps on it that you're welcome to have as well. So yeah, and of course all of these things that Bob talked about we're going to be trying to see at our star parties. So if you want to see them, you can come on out. We'll even have our bright green laser pointers to point out the constellations and show you exactly which point of light is the planets. And yeah, it's gonna be a great time. All right.
That's good. Yeah, I'm glad you'll, and the maps are nice, but like you said, the phone apps are really the way to go when it comes to identifying constellations. So it's good thing you'll have those as well.
Yeah. All right, well, I will do one more call for any questions that anyone has for Bob or Emma or us. While I do that, let me go ahead and pop up our schedule for this week. So as we've been saying, we're going to have our star parties starting tomorrow through Saturday. Tomorrow we'll be here in Duluth outside the planetarium. We'll have telescopes, not just with planetarium, but the Arrowhead Astronomical Society will be there with some telescopes. I think Bob said he's going to come by. We'll also have some activities, and we'll be running planetarium shows. So lots going on tomorrow night at the planetarium. And then after that, we are hitting the road. Wednesday, we'll be at Taguchi State Park, set up at the Visitor Center. Then on Thursday, we'll be at Split Rock Lighthouse, which is a new stop for us. I'm very excited to have that one this year. Then Friday, we'll be in Grand Marais at the North House Folk School, and Saturday, we'll be with Emma up at Chik-Wauk. And even if the weather does not cooperate with us, which everyone, knock on wood, we're going to have beautiful skies all week. We are still going to have lots of fun stuff to do. We'll have activities, we'll have digital sky tours. So even if you can't see the real sky at that time, we'll be able to show you what's up so that you can go and find it once the skies do clear up. So even if it's looking a little cloudy, definitely still come out and hang out with us. We're going to have a lot of great stuff going on. All right, well, I'm not seeing any questions. So I guess that means you two did an awesome job and left no questions for people. So I guess we will wrap it up there. Thank you again so much, Emma and Bob, for joining us tonight. I think this is a great way to kind of start off this week and kind of teach why we're doing this, why we're celebrating our skies, and all of the fun stuff that we're going to be able to see this week. Again, you can find our schedule for all of our stops on our website and our Facebook page. It's everywhere. Just look where the planetarium is and you will find the schedule. And yeah, I think, sorry, I just saw we got a comment. Okay, it was just a thanks. Okay, cool. So, yeah, we hope to see everyone. I might try and live stream some of the telescopes. We'll see how internet and skies and everything are cooperating. I'm not going to promise, but we'll see what we can do. All right, well, thanks for joining us. Thanks again, Bob and Emma. And we hope to see everyone at least at one of our stops this week. So until then, bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.